Hi, Jonathan Fields.
Hello.
Thank you for sitting down with Best Self today on this gorgeous, sunny, sparkly Monday morning.
I know, it is beautiful. It's perfect.
I know, it's for September, right? So there's this little story that I just wanted to tell you that about a year ago or so, our paths almost crossed professionally. And at that time, I didn't know who you were, but I was intrigued. And as I do, I started to do my research. And you had me at trampoline.
Apparently we had a lot of people at trampoline.
Oh, by the way, I can't find that video.
It is no longer up.
I know, so I looked for it again. And so for clarity for our audience, I just want to explain that here you were on this trampoline, jumping up and down in a video. And to camera, you said, I have something really important to share with you. And in that moment, you completely had me with your whimsy and your playfulness and your down-to-earth sensibility. The first thing on your bio reads dad, actually New York City dad and husband. Then comes award-winning author, speaker, media producer, camper, serial entrepreneurist, and founder of the mission-driven media and education venture, The Good Life Project. When I read that list and I take that in, it feels to me like all roads have led to this incredible culmination, this new book that's about to launch. I mean, this is our galley, the How to Live a Good Life. Soulful stories, surprising science, and practical wisdom. And I think that it would be a really great way to start this interview if you could tell us how a son of a hippie potter mother and a mad academic father goes on to become a corporate attorney and ultimately is a man jumping on a trampoline who
in bare feet,
guiding thousands, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs to live purposeful lives.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I turned 50 this year, and I'm at a point in my life where it's sort of like Steve Jobs' famous quote, you know, like you connect the dots looking back, but you have to have lived enough of life to actually have dots to see how they actually weave together and form.
Oh, I love that. You have to live.
Yeah, so I'm at a point where I started to reflect a lot and sort of like wonder what has been the through line with all of these things that I did. When I was a kid, I was an artist. I made my walking around money painting back when there were album covers, you know, on the backs of jean jackets. Like I still remember my big 3 ones.
What were they?
They were Rush.
Real music, right?
Right, real music, Molly Hatchet, and Boston, like that epic sort of like upside down spaceship guitar, the famous Boston cover. And from there I actually went on to school and ended up in law school, which was a bit of an aberration for me because I was also an entrepreneur as a kid. I was always figuring out ways to sort of like mix craft and entrepreneurship to earn a living.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think we're hardwired as entrepreneurs?
I don't think we're hardwired as entrepreneurs. I think some of us are actually, I don't even love to use the word hardwired anymore because there's so much rewiring that can happen that we now know with neuroplasticity. But I think a lot of us are predisposed by the time we reach adulthood. We've wired ourselves in a way where we're more comfortable living in a place of sustained uncertainty. And that's one of the fundamental traits of being able to survive as an entrepreneur, is that capacity. Either as an artist or an entrepreneur, you need the ability to be in that place long enough for next level ideas and solutions and creations to emerge. But being in that space kills most people. We're not wired to handle that well at all. So there are some people who do hit a certain point in their lives, and for some reason through, you know, a combination of nature and nurture, they're able to be in that space more comfortably. And those very often are the biggest creators that we have. That said, you know, what I have learned along the way is that you can also train a lot of that if you understand how to do it. Because I wasn't one of the people who was wired that way. I was, you know, I'm breathed by creation and the creative process, but I've always suffered pretty greatly along the way. And so it took me a lot of decades to really understand what I needed to do to start to be okay in that place. Really just in the last 5 years or so is where I start to come to a place where I understand the daily practices that I need to adopt to sort of lean into that and be okay.
Well, one of our writers wrote a great line, and I just quote over and over again. It's like, I got here as fast as I could.
Yeah.
right? So law school.
Yeah. So
and you practiced law.
Right, I did. I went to law school. I practiced law, which was an aberration from, if you ask those who knew me, law school was a really strange thing. But I was also an entrepreneur in college and a DJ. I built a sound and lighting company. I didn't exactly go to class in college. And I was very curious about what I was capable of academically and intellectually. And that was a large part of why I actually went to law school. And I figured, I didn't know if I'd practice, but I knew it would give me a great set of skills no matter what I did. And I ended up being very fortunate. I worked very hard. I did well. And that gave me opportunity in the career, which is, I stayed there for about 4.5 years. But during that window of time, I actually ended up in the hospital in emergency surgery when essentially my immune system shut down. Ended up with
your body's like,
yeah,
hello.
Yeah, I mean, and I was working maniacal hours, huge levels of stress, sleeping very little. My lifestyle habits were absolutely atrocious. My nutrition was non-existent. My movement was non-existent. Mindset practices.
How old were you about this?
30, right around 30.
Where we still think we're invincible and
on the edge.
Right, we can just keep on pushing the...
Yeah, and my body basically gave me a wake-up call, sent me to surgery when my immune system crashed. I had a huge infection in the middle of my body that literally ate a hole through my intestine from the outside in.
That'll wake you up.
It was, it was time. So it took me another year, close to a year, to work my way out of it. And then back into the world of entrepreneurship and wellness. And so I went.
So was it literally in that hospital room? Did you think, I can't go back, I can't do this anymore?
I knew that this was not my future. There was that, and there was also the awakening to the fact that the carrot that was being dangled in front of me, I had no interest in. So if I loved the practice, if I saw myself really wanting to be in a place of being a partner in a large firm, which is where I was at that point, I would have probably figured out a way to change my lifestyle to be able to handle.
Right. Because it's possible, correct?
Yeah, and I don't knock the career at all. It's just, it wasn't mine. And when I realized that I didn't want where it was leading me and the day-to-day life was destroying me, it was sort of the decision was made for me. But I also realized I was going to take a huge financial hit. And it was going to take me time to save up enough money to sort of make my next move, which would lead me back into entrepreneurship, learning an entirely new industry from the bottom up and making almost no money. But I had a plan in action at that point.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I kind of knew. I was like 9 to 12 months, I'm just going to save as much as I can. I'm going to try and take care of myself as much as I can now. But I knew I was on my way.
So you stayed for another 9?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew I wanted that buffer.
On your terms.
Right, exactly. And I didn't want to launch into this next place from a place of scarcity and desperation.
Right.
I wanted to know that I had enough, so I had a bit of a window to explore and figure out this new industry.
Is another thing that I really love about this book, because it's this yin yang of being practical and magical thinking, and we'll dive into that more later. But I do love this fact that yes, do what you love, but it's nice to have a plan. It's nice to, we can all say yes, I want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't necessarily want to be a starving one.
Right. No, I'm at a point in my life, and I've been at a point in my life for a long time now, where I live in New York City. I have a family to take care of. We like to live comfortably. So I don't want to go back to the place where I go to zero. And I know some people are okay doing that. I'm not, and most people I know don't want to blow up their lives in the name of this. So my exploration has been a lot more, can we not take the nuclear option? Can we actually find a way where we literally just practice our way into this next leg of our journey, and we just kind of slowly build the next leg until it reaches a point where we're like, we're just transitioning into it in a more organic, natural way, even if it takes more time. Because I think most people won't even take the first step if you tell them the only option is the mass disruption option.
Being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart.
It's not at all. I mean, just like being an artist is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
Anytime you create something from nothing, anytime you invest a huge amount of time, resources, love in something where you don't know if it's going to work, you don't know how it's going to end.
When you were laying in that hospital bed and you said, okay, I've got to shift this, enough is enough, and I'm going to do this on my own terms, and I'm going to do it in a practical way. What was the vision? It's
a great question. So I've always been deeply fascinated by mind-body connection, by mindset, by psychology, by somatics.
Especially when you made a hole in your intestine.
Yeah, there's that, right?
You're like, okay, I got to figure this thing out.
Right, exactly. My mom was a modern dancer also when I was a little kid. I trained as a competitive gymnast for the first 19, 20 years of my life, so it's deeply fascinating.
Wow, I didn't see that on your resume.
It's not in there. And I was the person who, even later in life, would just lie on a beach with a kinesiology manual because I was fascinated by it. So I was looking to sort of find the intersection of all of these things: entrepreneurship, mind, body, wellness. So for me, I knew that as I was building this buffer, I also needed to learn about this next industry. So I started just studying up on it. I found trade organizations, got all sorts of industry data to find out what worked, what wasn't working, what was the state of the industry, where were the gaps. And then I went and actually got my first certification as a personal trainer while I was literally barely sleeping.
So around what time was this? Like what year?
This was 96, 97, something like that.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought, oh my God, what have I just done? Like
many. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a moment. Actually, I would call it a span.
That's where I connected the dots.
Yeah, and look, I mean, here's the reality check on this. I knew that I had a degree, I had a license, I was still a member of the bar, I'd done really well academically, and that would follow me. So if things blew up, I had a retreat option. I didn't want to go there, and it was the last thing in the world that I would have thought about doing. But in the back of my mind, I can't deny the fact that I knew that I had a fallback.
So you're a logical thinker.
Yeah, logical thinker, but also pretty risk tolerant at the same time. So during that first movie, there was that, even though to me going back there would have been disastrous for me and for my health. But I went from there, and my first job out of law was making $12 an hour as a personal trainer. Could I have actually gotten probably a mid to an upper level management job in a company in the industry? Probably. But to me, I'm always fascinated at learning an industry from the most basic touch point.
Right.
So I can understand the level of one-to-one interaction.
Right.
What's going right? What's going wrong?
How
so
do I
can
connect
understand how to do it better
right.
and build something better around that. And then I'll build something bigger on top of that. But I don't want to start from the top down. I want to start from the most basic point of service, understand the human dynamic. How can I serve better? How can I delight better? How can I elevate and help people? And from there, you can build something different, and that's what we did. So I went off and launched my first facility, which was sort of a smaller footprint, 5,000 square foot high-end training facility. We took off very quickly because essentially I looked at the industry and I said, let me do everything that they're doing differently. And we thrived really quickly. That was in New Jersey, actually. And I was really yearning to kind of come back into the city and do something a little bit different. So I sold out. I had a partner in that company also, so I sold my equity to an investor group. Came back to Europe, took a year off actually because I was getting really interested in writing too. And then got a bug about yoga. And I had been developing my own practice. And I was looking around New York City. We were living in Hell's Kitchen. Then I was married, 3-month-old baby. And I said, there's something interesting going on here because I'm pretty comfortable with my body, with movement. And I'm uncomfortable going into most of the studios that are around the city. I knew that people that came at it somebody who's in the middle years of their lives, unfit, unflexible, very uncomfortable with sort of anything other than mainstream, would be uncomfortable walking into these other locations, even though they were great.
That's a really good point, though, because even with a lot of these gyms and clubs, and you've got to have that. You feel like your body's got to be in a certain shape, and you've got to be wearing a certain
right.
label.
It's like I'll go once I'm already
right when I'm ready to go.
It's like which kind of defeats the whole purpose. And then the other thing that I realized is that the vast majority of people, once I started moving to the yoga world, who practice are women, at least in the U.S. And women have much higher incidences of things like scent-triggered migraines, migraines in general, but also scent-triggered migraines. And there were all these triggers that exist in a lot of studios that actually pushed women away from them, as much as they really wanted to come to the practice. So when we started, the idea was to create a center where we kept the power of the practice, but lowered barriers to participation. So we did that, and literally signed a lease for a 6-year lease for a floor in a building in New York City. I was married, had a new home, and a 3-month-old baby on the day before 9/11.
I was reading that and I thought, oh wow.
Yeah, and that was a moment for all of us who were long-time New Yorkers. And
Standstill.
it was, and it came close to not moving forward with it because I was questioning a lot. But there was a moment a couple of days in that made me say it, like, we have one pass at this. And my sense was that the city would need what we were about to create more than ever.
More than
before.
ever, exactly.
And so we went ahead with it, and in the middle of November, we opened the place. Where we were located was actually 2 avenue blocks, which for non-city dwellers is, like about a quarter of a mile. It's about a half mile from some of the big piers where many of the relief workers were being staged. We just sent people down. We're like, come, don't pay. It's just, people were literally walking around the city not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go. They just wanted a place to be with others and be in community,
right,
and find some way to breathe.
Right.
And so we changed everything about the way that we were going to launch and opened up our doors to whoever wanted to show up for whatever reason. And the community embraced us. And we grew rapidly, and it was an amazing experience. And that studio, the whole company, the company is still there. At the end of 2008, ended up selling it because by then, after teaching for 7 years, owning and growing this, it was also time for me to move on to my next adventure.
So the $1 million question: how do we live a good life?
A couple answers. One thing that
a whole book of answers.
It's one thing I discovered really early on is that there is no single answer that is 100% universal to every person. I've had the amazing gift to sit down with hundreds of who the world might perceive to be the most successful people in almost every domain in life at this point and ask them this exact question: how would they define it? And very rarely has the answer been the same, which surprised me, to be honest with you. I figured after about a dozen people, it would start to
You're like, okay, these 10 are in this category, these 2 are in this category.
It's always been different in nuanced ways. But what I started to realize is there are big patterns that emerged. And I had always, for years, when I was trying to figure out how to craft my life in a way that was deeply meaningful to me, that there was a standard, that there was a question that I always asked myself. So if an opportunity came to me, whether it was to spend time with a person, to develop a friendship, to build a business, whatever it may have been, I would ask myself, will this allow me to absorb myself in activities and relationships that fill me up while surrounding myself with people I can't get enough of? And if the answer was yes, I was in. If the answer was no, I was out. And those activities were very often a blend of fierce creativity and fierce service.
Right.
So from that, sort of the blend of all these conversations, and that's sort of like more fundamental, and that's sort of the metric that I've been using for many years and largely continue to use to sort of figure out my own life. This bigger model, the patterns, like the dots start to drop and form patterns for me. And the idea of actually a good life being basically a blend of what I call the 3 buckets, 3 different buckets. That we are each made up of a bucket of vitality, a bucket of connection, and a bucket of contribution.
One thing that I really love when I'm looking at the Good Life Project, I'm calling through your information or your books, and particularly this new book that's just about to come out, is you have this really beautiful way, a succinct way of distilling a message. I have millions of quotes that I could pull out of here, pull quotes that I would just say sort of like define the essence of the interview. And for you, I kept coming back to something that was really simple, and it just kept making me laugh and made me just feel inspired and filled. And it was simply, and I quote, "Do stuff that matters." And the other one is, "Do epic shit."
Make meaning.
Yeah, make meaning. I just wanted to show this picture because you've come up with this great metaphor for buckets. I mean, everybody always talks about their bucket list as if it's like the end game.
Yeah.
But here we have connection, contribution, and vitality. And I want to get into each one of them with you, but what I loved about this distillation is your description how, number 1, buckets leak. And that it matters, like that they all matter, like all aspects of our lives. Like we've got to pay attention to all of them. If one bucket's at a deficit, it affects the other buckets, right?
Nothing operates in a vacuum in our lives, and everything is interdependent. It's like if you look at medicine these days, and this is why, I talk about, for example, your state of mind and your state of body is one thing. They're part of a single bucket, and for years, a lot of us separated those things out. There's mindset, there's your psychology and your emotion, and then there's your physical body.
Right.
And it's just this complete fiction.
Right, so let's go into vitality, because you're talking about vitality right now.
Sure.
And just continue on that thought.
So there is this interdependence with everything. And so if you think about the vitality bucket, we're talking about optimizing your state of mind and your state of body. And what we know now is that it's clear as day, there's the science validated, is there is no separation in the two. It's one feedback mechanism, and it's always feeding back from one side to the other. So if you are physically ill, if you're injured, if you're in pain, like physically, it is going to immediately reverse up into your state of mind. It has the opportunities to send you into a state of angst, anguish, depression, anxiety, and all severe manifestations of the same thing. If you're depressed, if you're just feeling blue, it is very likely to actually manifest somatically in your body as pain, as illness. So there's no reason or way to actually talk about them separately. So when I talk about filling your vitality bucket, the conversation, I talk about a lot of things that actually address both mindset and the physical body, because I think you can't talk about them separately. But the idea is, you want to do a little bit every day to really make your physical body and feel better and to elevate your state of mind.
Right. It's kind of amazing that we still are having this conversation. But it's true. I mean, and I listen, in all fairness, I've been there before where something really hurts. My back really hurts. And that's real pain, right?
Right behind the scenes this morning, I feel like I was a little late today because I have 5 things going on at once. I had a back spasm. We know where that came from.
Right. Well, I mean, I once had my back go out on me completely at like a really high intense stress point in my life, and I wasn't aware of those connections. And it's funny you mentioned kinesiology, because it wasn't until a friend came with a car and said, I'm taking you to my kinesiologist. I was like, I don't care, you could take me to your witch doctor. I need to make this pain go away. Like literally was flat on the floor. But it was the beginning of that cracking open for me, the understanding that, oh yeah, all that stress that I've just been having, it's right here. Of course, we're still bombarded with pharmaceutical ads and magical pills that can make that back pain go away, right?
We love shortcuts and we love instant, and our expectation of both is only getting higher and higher. We want shorter and we want more instant. Technology is really reinforcing those things.
So one of the things also in this book that you really do a great job of, and seems like it's an overall goal with all the buckets, is really just sort of discerning where are you disconnected from? What are you disconnected from? And at the same time, like what's working, what's not working? How do we look at our lives and assess them and say, okay, this needs my attention, or this is going to start affecting my other buckets?
One of the things that's really important to me about not just writing this book, but about all the work that I do, whether it's experiences that we create, programs, products, whatever it may be, is that we move beyond information. We all know that everything we need to know has been out there for the better part of a couple thousand years, if not longer. The reason that the human condition is the human condition, and there's still so much suffering, still so much pain, it's not that we don't know how to live better. It's that we don't act on what we know. So the goal with everything that I do is to figure out how to deliver it in a way that somehow flips a switch.
Sparks something.
That sparks somebody and make it so simple. I mean, so the whole idea with the buckets is it's a model and a metaphor where you hear it once, you remember it for life, and it can guide your behavior on a daily basis. So people will actually use it. My greatest hope with everything that we do is not that just that people learn what to do, but that people actually do it.
You say the real magic is taking this from the book to the world.
Right, it's just action.
It's not just reading the book, it's not just doing the exercises, it's like, take this to your life. So how do we train the average Western mind, now boasting a shorter attention span than that of a goldfish, to focus and become more persistently aware? How do we become aware that we're not aware?
That is a big question, and it's one of the first things that I introduce, especially under that bucket. But the truth is, it's the meta skill, because how do we know if we're not living a good life unless we're aware of the life we're living? Unless we actually develop the skill set to know, am I happy, am I sad, am I in pain, or am I calm? Am I in love, am I in friendship? Am I working fiercely? Do I care about what I'm doing, or do I have no interest in it whatsoever? Most of us actually have never developed that skill set. We're trained in domain knowledge, like in specific sets of knowledge. We're never trained in self-knowledge, and we're never given a process to sort of discover things about ourselves, and also to just process to become aware in our own lives. To actually be able to zoom the lens out and say, what's really happening here? Like, what are the facts versus the story that I'm telling you about the facts? So developing sort of an awareness practice, a mindfulness practice, to me is the foundation for pretty much everything, because how can you be intentional about your life if you're not aware before that?
Right.
So like to actually choose how you want to live, to move out of a place where you open your eyes in the morning and you're responding to a million people's agendas but yours, starting with email and then text and then Snapchat and then Instagram and then everything else. People are coming at you. Essentially, there's a mad dash of people in all different parts of your life demanding that you spend this day satisfying their agenda. So you react. You live reactively every minute of every day. And sometimes you sneak in a little bit of intentionality, a little bit of choice that says, I choose to craft my life this way. I choose to do this meaningful thing or be with this person who I can't get enough of, but not enough. And the prerequisite to all of that is actually developing the skill so you can become aware of when you're not doing it, when you're being intentional and reactive. And that is the foundation for being able to actually choose.
And it's really interesting because it essentially goes back to very simple questions. And I remember a time in my life where I wasn't asking myself questions. So if you were to go back to that 30-year-old you who's about to crash, and to all the 30-year-olds out there who are sort of not asking those questions, what question do they start with?
To me, a starting point is developing a daily practice, a daily mindfulness, a daily awareness practice. Because it's not an instant thing; it's a skill set. That there are some people who probably just walk around in their they're in some way they're tapped in. That's not most people, especially in Western society, right? So it's a practice that builds over time. So for me, I wake up every morning and I have a morning ritual, and the center of that ritual is a seated mindfulness practice. And that actually started for me, not in the nicest way. It started with me on my knees trying to be okay as I was moving through a really difficult thing. But it turned into something that took me from being in a lot of pain to baseline, and then from baseline to really, really good and hyper aware, and having the ability to just kind of stop a lot and say, is this what I actually want to be doing right now?
Right.
Is this how I want to be having this conversation with this person? Is the way that I'm investing my time adding meaning to my life and to others? Is it being of service to people? I think the most fundamental thing for a lot of people is to start to develop that morning practice. It doesn't have to be big. I sit for 25 to 30 minutes every morning, but it took me time to get there.
It could start for someone with a walk.
Absolutely.
It could be many things, but essentially what it really boils down to is a sort of settling in and a real genuine self-care practice, something that sets you off on the day, that really says I love you, you're worth it, and I'm going to take care of you, and before you head out.
Yeah, it's a commitment to cultivating stillness.
Right.
To cultivating the ability to, like you said, become aware of your awareness, which is very meta.
Even if it means getting up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I'm the first person who's up in my house, and I take that window before in the really quiet hours in the morning to just be with myself.
Those are the best hours.
It's also the best creative time, right?
It is very creative. Yeah. I also don't want to gloss over the fact that this is also a practical guide for people, that you have these daily, you have these prompts, these daily explorations. So could you just give us an example of a daily exploration in the vitality section?
Sure. So there's a chapter called Forest Bathing, or it's about this.
You have the best chapter in Forest, by the way.
And the idea is that there's actually tremendous research on how nature affects both our physiology and our psychology. Being among trees, being among nature, literally, it decreases markers for inflammation and disease, it improves mood. It actually it has a pretty profound effect on us, so much so that in Japan, there are actually these things called Shinrin-yoku designated forests, which translates to forest bathing. Because you literally, you want people going into these forests because it makes the culture healthier and happier. So many of us don't have forests to walk into.
I was just going to say, let's talk about that.
I'm very fortunate. So what can I do? I can go outside. I'm in the middle of New York City, and you figure, okay, I'm surrounded by concrete all day long. Truth is, there are these beautiful little community gardens all over the place in the city. I'm 2 blocks from Central Park. You will find me there on almost a daily basis just to be among greenery or walking along the Hudson River, which is my other reset. But even if you don't have that, let's say, if you don't have grass, if you don't have trees, if you don't have any nature near you, which I'm pretty suspect about, to be honest with you.
Right.
But even if you don't have that, there's research that shows that simply having a plant in view in your interior environment can change you. One of the fascinating things about that, if you have a plant in view in an inside environment, it actually decreases, I think it was anger, by 40%
Wow.
over the course of a day. So it makes these things make a real difference. So you can start with these little things, bring greenery into your internal environment. And then, as much as you can, get out into these environments. You don't have to spend hours, but just be in them. Because when you think about it, that it's sort of like getting back to our most primal nature. These are the things that we do and that we did to be okay in the world. And we tend to extract ourselves from them more and more, and we're suffering more and more. The human condition has not improved a whole lot.
Exactly.
And so you start to say, well, at the same time, we're pulling ourselves in some of the things that made us okay in past generations. And I think we're seeing a bit of a reclaiming of that to a certain extent.
It's also a form of active meditation.
It is,
Your best
absolutely.
ideas come when you're walking alone
Yeah.
and you're not on your phone. And I unfortunately, I have to leave my phone at home because a lot of times I love to run early in the morning, but I will actually get on the phone or listen to something and, it's that multitasking. So it's like that just reset, that downtime. So I'm going to move into the next bucket. Let's move into connection.
Yeah.
And this is nurturing of obviously relationships with other people, but also relationship to yourself and then relationship to a higher source.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about you and what Jonathan Haidt, a psychologist, would call the in-between. It's you and your knowledge and relationship with yourself, with an intimate partner, with family members, with close friends, colleagues. As you mentioned, if it's something that's meaningful to you, something bigger than you, whether you call it source or God or whatever it may be, it's also about community, which a lot of us actually forget. We have a profound necessary need to belong. If we do belong, a lot of life flourishes for us. If we don't belong, a lot of life withers. And what's fascinating to me, I'm fascinated by this part of connection especially, because we tend to think about love, especially romantic love, when we think about connection, and that can be really important, right? And a beautiful thing. One of the things that we very often don't think about is community and a sense of belonging, of being with like-minded people with shared values and aspirations and beliefs on a regular basis, being among them, being held by them, being supported by them, sharing ideas.
I call them dream keepers.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Right.
And that's going away in a lot of people's lives. Families are getting distributed in a way that they were generations ago. People are just splitting off and moving away to all different places. Employers aren't providing a sense of community anymore. People are fleeing faith-based organizations and communities at a faster rate than ever before in history. Local leagues and trade organizations are going away. So all these places where
So it's like a breakdown.
Yeah.
Disconnect.
We're not finding it anymore, and we're suffering because of it and not understanding that that's a part of the reason that we're suffering.
So you're really guiding people to make those connections and to seek out those kinds of...
To get proactive about, reclaiming that sense. Where can I find that sense of belonging? And if I can't find it, can I create it?
Right. Which you certainly can.
You can, absolutely. I mean, it's what we do with everything we do in life.
You talk about energy vampires.
Yeah.
And creating a vampire edge. So I think that's the counter to this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there will be people in all of our lives who fill us up, and there will be people in all of our lives who empty us out. And popular culture sometimes says, well, just jettison those people who empty you out from your lives. Sometimes you can, sometimes you should. Sometimes you can't,
right?
And sometimes you should. I mean, if it's close family members, if it's a dear friend who's been there for life, you're not going to just walk away from those people. I mean, the practical reality is you want these people in your life. They may not agree with you, and they may be going through something deeply painful. They may be angry. They may be spiteful. And that may be sort of putting them in a place where they're trying to bring you down at the same time. Not actually because they're venomous towards you, but they may be in their own really dark place. And seeing other people not there with them can actually increase their pain. So one of the most important things, I think, is to really understand when you're around those people, who can you really step away from and who can't you? And if there are people you can comfortably move away from, do it. But if there aren't, it's time for a deeper conversation with them. It's also very likely.
It might be easier to move away from them than have that conversation.
It might be. But sad for so many people to do, because they may literally like throw people out of their lives who, if they were willing to actually be with them more compassionately for a bit longer time, have difficult conversations, and try and stand in their shoes and understand what's really happening. And they may be able to actually navigate this and come full circle and turn it around, and then have that beautiful relationship sustained in their lives for the balance moving forward, rather than just saying, no, you're sucking the life out of me, go away.
Right.
Which is sort of like the popular approach.
I really love that point, because the cultivation of compassion creates perspective.
It does.
And sometimes the way we once perceived a person or situation, we formulate this idea and then we hold staunchly to it. And it's like a dog with a bone, we're not going to let go of that. And so it's through that compassion when you all of a sudden say, if you can just like let that armor down and sort of say like, oh, I never really thought of it that way. Ask
yourself, what is this person suffering that I may not be witness to?
And bucket number 3, contribution.
Yeah. It's how you bring your gifts, the essence of who you are, your creative voice, your strengths to the world. And it's interesting because we actually had a conversation about this when I was working on the book. And the suggestion was to call it work. And I resisted that, because the work immediately, the association for everybody is this is a thing you get paid for in the world.
Right.
Sometimes it is.
9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Right. But sometimes it's not.
Right.
Like sometimes your work, sometimes your greatest contribution is as a parent. Sometimes your greatest contribution is as a value, as a volunteer in an organization where you feel a deep yearning for service to a particular community. Sometimes your greatest contribution as an artist is painting from 5 to 9 at night and on the weekends. And you have no desire to leave the 9 to 5 gig that you get paid for, because that puts a roof over your head, like food on the table, and gives you the freedom to not actually have to tailor the deeply meaningful creative work that you're doing to any commercial need. So it's important, I think, to understand that contribution may be your work, and if they align, that's beautiful, that's amazing. But you can still have a really beautiful life and contribute with grace without having to actually make that the centerpiece.
You just segued perfectly into something I wanted to ask you, because there was something in the book that really sort of stopped me in my tracks, because sometimes we throw these terms around like purpose and passion, and they begin to sound like just Hallmark greeting cards, right? And platitudes and cliches. And there was something that you wrote, which was, what if you don't so much have a passion or purpose as much as you pursue something or a bunch of things with passion and a sense of purpose? And the nuance of that was so beautifully displayed by that story. I'd love for you to tell the story of the call center. I think they were actively fundraising for scholarships or something like that. So could you share that story?
This was research that Adam Grant, who's one of the top professors at Wharton, wrote this fabulous book called Give and Take. They went to a call center at the university. And it's a notoriously brutal job. And because these are people who are just making calls.
They're constantly getting hung up.
Right, they're constantly getting hung up. They're asking for money. Will you make donations? And this particular call center was trying to raise money for donations for scholarships. What Adam and his team did was they brought in a couple of people who had been through college, some of them being the first people in their families, who would never have had the chance to actually go through college, but for the fact that people like the people in the call center had made these calls and raised the money to create these scholarships that let these people go to school, and just for a few minutes told their story to these people in the call centers. These people for the first time actually understood, I'm not just dialing for dollars, right? I'm doing something which is helping change people's lives in a tangible way. And I've just seen this person. I get it now. Without deliberately or intending to make any changes, they then tracked the output, the money raised by those people after this intervention, and it skyrocketed. People were making more calls. They didn't even realize what they were doing differently. All they knew was the outcomes were dramatically
connected
higher.
to something.
Yeah, because now it meant something. There was a sense of purpose. There was a sense of meaning that was much deeper, and it changed the way that they brought themselves to the world.
Maybe we're not in the, you're not so passionate about your job, and And you also said, I'm not saying stay in that job, but sort of explore what's underneath that first.
Yeah.
And what is it that you're disconnected to? Because it might not even be the job. It might be something else that's going on within you. And that you can show up for your life.
Right. And how many people have left a job because they're like, oh, this job is awful. And then they move to another job, and soon enough, oh, this job is awful. And they move to, and like 6 jobs later, suddenly like the world is against them and every job is awful. It's just like, like if you're an employer or an employee, just everything you do is awful. Never really actually considering
what's the common denominator here.
Right. It comes from the inside out. Maybe there's work that we need to do, and there's a whole field now. There's a really interesting sort of line of research called job crafting, which really sort of looks at the job that you're doing and says, can I do this differently? Can I re-engineer the way that I'm actually doing the work under the same exact job title so that it becomes more meaningful to me? And it's really effective actually at both making people a lot happier and more fulfilled in the work that they're doing, and also, interestingly, having them advance much more quickly. So it's fascinating how much more control we have over these things than we sometimes like to give ourselves credit for, because it makes it easier for us to just bail rather than do the work and say, how can I actually make this astonishing? My recommendation to people before they leave anything is always make it as good as you can conceivably make it.
Right.
Then at that point, if you still want to leave,
that's fine. You've done your exploration.
Yeah.
But I also really wanted to bring that point up because I feel like there's some passion shaming, I mean, I think some people walk around, they're like, I'm living a life full of passion and purpose. And then other people are sitting there thinking, like, I'm not really 100% sure what my passion and purpose is. But it's like, it starts with bringing your passion to whatever it is you're doing.
It's not a noun. It's an adjective.
Right.
That's the whole thing. It's like we treat it as if it's this noun that you have to like mine and
I've got a lot of it.
Or go through a process and say, I found the noun that's passion in my life. For a really, really thin slice of people, it is that. For the kid who realizes at the age of 6 they want to be a vet, and that's it, right? But for the vast majority of us, we don't know. And the only thing, like to me, the thing that allows us to live well and still feel like, even if we can't name the passion or the purpose, but feel like we're living every day with passion, with purpose, is to wake up every day and just say, what can I do today that gives me that experience? Right. And then what can I do tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day? And you look back over a period of years and you're like, you know what? There was never one big thing that dropped in, that one big noun that was my passion or my purpose. But I've lived with fierce passion and with a sense of purpose. That's good.
Right. So what lights you up? Where you are right now?
Yeah.
Just turned 50.
Everything. This moment, my daughter, my wife, meaningful work, being in a relationship with like a team of people who are incredible, a community of just awesome human beings, being able to create. Look, there are drags in all of our lives. There's negative stuff, there's struggles that I have in my life and that everybody has in their lives, But for me, I really try and focus on possibility as much as I can.
Oh, you ooze possibility. I mean, this book oozes possibility.
Thank you. I mean, that's largely the goal of this.
When did you know that you were going to take all of this, that you really wanted to sort of cultivate this community supporting entrepreneurs, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, and really just setting them off on their way? So
what's interesting is we're actually in the middle of probably a pretty significant shift right now. So I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. Something's happened with me over the last couple of years, really, which is that I've also realized that I may be less interested in entrepreneurship than I thought. And what I've realized is that for me, entrepreneurship is this stunning canvas for the development of human potential. What I realized I'm more fascinated by is actually how that gauntlet, how that process changes the person within it. So I'm fascinated by entrepreneurship as a tool for the development of human potential. And I'm interested in how that person has changed. But what I've also realized is that I'm just fascinated by human potential. I'm just so interested in how we step into that place where we feel like, yes, like when I take my last breath, I will feel like I'm fully used up. And that I'm expressing all of myself. I'm deeply engaged with those around me. There's meaning in everything that I do. I feel like my strengths, everything inside of me are being just leveraged to the hilt on a daily basis. I'm fascinated by not just how entrepreneurs entrepreneurs do that, but how we all do that.
Right.
Entrepreneurship, what I've realized, it's just been an interesting canvas. And now I've realized that I'm actually starting to broaden my lens a lot too. So if you look at our community, a Good Life Project, started for sure.
Everybody's got to look at the Good Life Project.
But now it's entrepreneurs are a piece of that community, but now she's just a global community of amazing people who just want to explore what it means to live a good life.
I think entrepreneurs are setting the stage. They're the trailblazers, but it's not just, as you say, it's not just entrepreneurs. Because obviously living a good life is not just for an entrepreneur.
I try and write each book with a person in mind. I literally will create a persona that I'm writing to, because that allows me to have a conversation rather than just profess. And the person I wrote this to is not an entrepreneur. This is a person who's in the middle years of their lives, who's been through enough to know that there's great things and there are struggles, but also they've made great sacrifices. They've come second in almost everything that they've done, sometimes third, fourth, and fifth. Very likely lost a solid sense of identity along the way. They look in the mirror, it's not about not being happy with how their clothes fit, it's not being happy with who they are at this moment in time. And knowing at the same time that who they are is still there, it's just buried.
Right.
And it's about the process of how can we take small steps every day to let that person emerge again into life.
And also I want to just do a little shout out to the men, because it seems like a lot of men in corporate world, men particularly, are sort of told from the time that they're, young boys growing up, it's like we don't bring our feelings and our emotions into our decisions and into our business and into the way we conduct our lives. And sometimes I feel like men have to break out and become entrepreneurs so that they can start to allow all of that, to unleash that and connect to that humanness. And, wouldn't it be beautiful if they could sit in around a boardroom table and say, how's everybody feeling about this decision? Or what does your gut tell you?
I think it'd be amazing. I think it's funny, people have asked me many times, in your mind, what's the biggest benefit of being an entrepreneur? Like, is it the freedom? I'm like,
yeah, there's no freedom at work, 7 days a week.
You are never the boss. If you're an entrepreneur, your customer is the boss. Like, to me, the greatest thing about being an entrepreneur is that you get to create the culture, and then you get to choose the people that you bring into that culture.
Right.
So, when we have emails or meetings with our team, most often, the sign off is XO or love.
I heard you could be bribed with dark chocolate, though.
Clearly. I can be bribed with a lot of things that are nutritious and non-nutritious.
One thing I want to just come back to as we're wrapping up the 3 buckets is, again, this sensibility, feet on the ground, down to earth, keeping it real, bringing from the book to the world. You said in between those happy thoughts is a thing called reality. Deciding you want to be happy is step 1. But deciding and repeating, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, doesn't a happy make. That's called being a Pollyanna.
The truth is, you don't live a good life by just snapping your fingers. You live a good life by doing the work, by building a practice. To me, it's not a place at which you arrive. It's a daily practice. A good life is a daily practice that over time leads to something astonishing. So approach it that way. And the way the book is structured is designed so that there's a little something to do every day. So you practice your way into it by just doing a little something every single day, and take a long game. It took you a long time, very likely, to get to your place in life now. So to start to move away from that, to start to build around it, is going to be a little bit of work, and that's okay. There's a lot of grace in understanding that the work is part of what makes the outcome. It's part of what makes the practice
the work
so
is the
rewarding.
Right.
Yeah.
There's another video that I love of yours, which is #IamWilling, which is about the paradox of change. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's just, we all want the outcome. We all want the dream outcome. We all point to something. We're we want that. We want to be in this place. Very few of us actually want to own the process. We want to own the outcome. We want to walk into a restaurant and say, I own this place, and walk to the table and say, hello, are you enjoying your food? This is wonderful. This is mine. Very few of us actually want to do the work to build a restaurant because it's brutally hard. It's the same thing with almost every dream outcome in life. We want to own the outcome, but not the process. The person who really does what they need to do here in life is the one who's willing to raise their hand and say, I'm willing to own the process as well as the outcome.
You mentioned bigger world problems, poverty. Nobody, we can all agree we don't want this, we don't want that, we want to end poverty, but are we really willing It's very provocative. Are we really willing to own what's necessary to do that?
Yeah.
I just recently had the opportunity to work with youth leaders and millennials who I think get a bad rap, and we're both parents of teenagers. And what is your message to your daughter and to the youth? Like what do you want to impart on her?
It's funny because my message is nothing that I could ever say to her, because as we know, kids don't really listen to or model what we say. They watch what we do.
You could text her.
I can text her, right? It's find the thing that lights you up and build your life around it. Maybe it's your work, maybe it's not, but do the work to figure it out. It may take the whole first half of your life to figure it out. And that's okay. Play a long game, but that matters. And find the activities that light you up and the relationships that light you up. And then do those things. Be with those people as much as you can.
In terms of the buckets, do you have a vulnerable bucket?
Yeah, vitality, for sure. I love my work. There's so many paths that I can go down to fill that bucket with deeply meaningful, strengths-driven work. I have amazing relationships in my life. I work, my wife and I build our company together.
How long have you been working with your wife?
Well, on and off for a long time, but in this endeavor, in this venture, about 2 years now.
Yeah, wonderful.
And for me, my weak link, the thing that I kind of have to keep pulling myself back to is vitality, because I can ignore that in the name of deepening into relationships and building stuff in the world. So I'm constantly sort of committing to my daily practice to make sure that I have a baseline commitment to bucket filling there every day.
Now, I know we have this very minute amount of time on the planet, but what do you want to accomplish and how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, it's, I once sort of set to go and answer this question, and the essence of this message was, don't remember me, remember the people who I've worked with and the good work that they've done in the world. And I would hope that in some way I would be able to make that sort of level of difference in other people's lives. I don't have this sort of deep ego need for me to have that. I just want to do good work while I'm here.
I can attest to the fact that you are doing good work while you're here. You are inspiring entrepreneurs through your Good Life project, through your Good Life work and this new book, which is fantastic. And this is going to be released
October 18th.
Right, okay, October 18th. I am really grateful that our paths have crossed and that you are a member of my tribe and our Best Self family. And I just want you to know that my Good Life buckets runneth over because of you. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.